In this lesson, we are going to touch history, but not as spy entertainment. The real question is much more practical. Why did intelligence become a professional discipline? Why do people talk about requirements, collection, analysis, delivery, review, and boundaries? And why is OSINT not just a modern set of search tricks? If you treat history as a list of agency names, it will feel distant. But if you treat it as the origin of working methods, it becomes very useful. When you verify a company, check a rumor, or trace an online asset, you are doing a smaller version of the same problem. Define the question, find sources, test evidence, and deliver a judgment someone can review. By the end of this lesson, the output is simple: a modern intelligence source map. It will help you see where open sources fit, what they can answer, and where other source types may be needed.
A lot of beginners start OSINT by asking for tools. What is the best search engine? What database should I use? Is there a platform that can find everything? Tools matter, but they are not the main problem. The harder problem is what to do after you find material. You may have a company registry record, a lawsuit, a hiring page, several news articles, and a supply chain clue. Without a workflow, those pieces just sit next to each other. Intelligence history gives us a better pattern. Professional work connects questions, sources, evidence, judgment, and responsibility. If someone asks, "Can we work with this supplier?" the answer cannot be, "I found its website." You need to explain what the evidence shows, how strong it is, and what remains uncertain. That is why we study history here, not to imitate covert operations, but to understand why professional workflow exists. Early intelligence could be very fragmented. One person brings a report, another person hears a rumor, someone else finds a document. Without structure, these pieces can become noise very quickly. Modern intelligence work separates the job into requirements, collection, processing, analysis, delivery, and feedback. These words sound formal, but the idea is straightforward. Requirements ask what problem we are solving. Collection finds the material. Processing makes the material usable. Analysis explains what it means. Delivery puts the judgment in front of the right person. Feedback checks whether the judgment actually helped. Think about a viral screenshot. You should not jump straight to true or fake. First, ask what the screenshot claims. Then look for the original post, the timestamp, a second source, and any signs of editing or missing context. If the user later tells you the real concern is location rather than the person in the screenshot, the requirement changes and the cycle loops back. So intelligence is not a pile of messages. It is a work chain that turns material into judgment. OSS was created in a wartime environment, and that context matters. War produces urgent questions and messy information at the same time. Maps, harbor photos, newspapers, human reports, and propaganda can all matter. But if they are not organized around a mission, they remain scattered material. OSS is useful for us because it shows how research, collection, analysis, and operational support can be put into one frame. For OSINT, the lesson is direct. Imagine you are checking whether a port is still operating normally. You might use satellite imagery, ship tracking, local news, job postings, and social media photos. The point is not to collect everything. The point is to sort each source by the question it helps answer: activity, disruption, capacity, timing, or uncertainty. OSS reminds us that material becomes useful only when it is organized around a task. After the war, intelligence could not remain only a temporary wartime project. Long-term risks still existed, and decision-makers needed continuing analysis and warning. The CIA represents that move toward permanent intelligence capability. For this lesson, do not focus on the mysterious side. Focus on 4 ideas: long-term work, source integration, warning, and decision support. This maps cleanly to OSINT. If you study an industry, one news article is rarely enough. You need to track announcements, hiring, funding, supply chains, policy changes, and public sentiment over time. A single event may be noise. Repeated movement over several months may become a signal. The shift from OSS to CIA teaches a practical habit. One search can answer a small question, but tracking over time creates stronger judgment. Let us translate the previous 2 slides into working habits. First, do not start by searching. Start by writing the task. Is this company a suitable supplier? Is a very different task from, does this company have a website? The first needs risk judgment. The second only checks existence. Second, choose sources according to the task. Company risk may require registry records, lawsuits, sanctions or penalties, hiring changes, media reports, and supply chain relationships. News verification may require original source tracing, timeline checks, reverse image search, and independent confirmation. Location verification may require maps, street views, building features, weather, and shadows. Third, deliver a judgment, not a pile of findings. A useful sentence sounds like this. Public evidence suggests elevated supplier risk, based on contract disputes, hiring contraction, and negative media reports, but financial data and customer-side evidence are still missing. That is far stronger than saying, I found a lot of links.
Now we look at MI6 from a different angle. Again, we are not telling legend stories. We are using it to understand a tradition, secret intelligence tied to diplomacy, overseas environments, and long-term networks. The OSINT lesson is not secrecy. The lesson is context and network thinking. People, companies, and institutions do not appear in isolation. They usually sit inside regions, industries, events, organizations, and relationships. Suppose you need to verify someone who claims to be an expert. A personal profile is not enough. You would look for conference lists, institutional pages, publication records, advisory board mentions, and repeated connections to companies or foundations. A single page may be weak. A stable pattern across multiple public records is much more useful.
This slide slows us down before we make a conclusion from one clue. A person attending one conference does not automatically mean they are a core member of an organization. A company appearing in a list does not automatically mean it played the main role. An account reposting a message does not automatically make it the original source. To reduce that kind of mistake, connect place, time, identity, organization, and interests. In an expert verification task, put roles, publications, conference records, institutional pages, and media interviews into one table. Then ask, do they support each other? Are the dates consistent? Does the identity stay the same across sources? This is the move from finding records to analyzing context. It protects you from being pulled too far by a single attractive clue.
During and after the Cold War, intelligence sources expanded heavily. Intelligence was no longer only human reports and documents. It also included imagery, signals, location data, and communication traces. The important point is not more sources are better. The important point is that each source type has a boundary. A satellite image may show a new building, more vehicles, or a changed road. It does not directly prove intention. A communication trace may show that two nodes are connected. It does not automatically explain the meaning of the relationship. A social media post may show that a narrative is spreading. It does not prove that the narrative is accurate. In OSINT, always ask two questions. What can this source show, and what can it not show? That habit prevents overclaiming.
After the Cold War, many intelligence problems became more distributed. Counterterrorism, transnational crime, cyber operations, influence campaigns, and supply chain risks often leave traces across many public spaces. This is one reason open sources moved forward. Clues may appear in web pages, forums, social platforms, hiring posts, leaked databases, map imagery, domain records, or code repositories. In many cases, open sources are not background material. They are the first place an investigation begins. For example, in a phishing investigation, you may start with a suspicious domain, then check registration data, certificate transparency logs, related IP addresses, historical DNS, copied page templates, and reused code. Much of that path is OSINT, but frontline does not mean automatically reliable. Public information can be copied, edited, planted, misread, or taken out of context. That is why verification and source rating become more important, not less. This slide places OSINT inside the modern system. OSINT is often an entry point. It helps you discover problems, build leads, and narrow the scope.
If a news claim looks suspicious, you can trace the original source, check the timestamp, run image checks, and look for independent reporting. If a company looks risky, you can start with public filings, lawsuits, hiring changes, and media coverage. OSINT can also support standalone judgments. Location checks, company risk, account linkage, exposed assets, and abnormal narratives can often be investigated quite deeply with public evidence. But OSINT is not a master key. Some questions require internal documents, field inspection, technical testing, or interviews. A professional report states that limit clearly. For example, public imagery suggests increased activity at the site, but public imagery alone cannot determine the specific purpose of the activity.
This boundary slide is not optional. We mention OSS, CIA, and MI6 to understand method, organization, and professional boundaries. We are not learning covert action. OSINT remains public, legal, restrained, and reviewable. That means no intrusion, no bypassing access controls, no impersonating real people, and no misuse of private information. Publicly visible does not automatically mean ethically reusable. Technically possible does not automatically mean acceptable. A useful test is simple. If someone asked you to explain your method publicly, could you explain why it was legal, necessary, and restrained? If not, do not use it. This standard will come back later in the lessons on investigation safety and ethics. The output for this lesson is a modern intelligence source map. Include at least 6 source types: open sources, human sources, signals, imagery, internet infrastructure, and commercial databases. Do not just list the names. For each source type, write 3 things: what question it can answer, what evidence it usually provides, and what its limits are. For example, open sources may answer whether a claim has public support. Evidence may include announcements, web pages, reports, maps, and social posts. The limits are deletion, editing, reposting, and missing context. Imagery may help verify location and physical change, but it cannot directly prove intention. This map will be useful later. Before starting an investigation, you can look at it and ask, which source type should I start with? Where do I need confirmation? And where must I avoid overclaiming?
Let us close the lesson. The history of intelligence organizations tells us that intelligence is not loose information. It is a professional system built around decisions. OSS teaches task organization. CIA teaches long-term capability and warning. MI6 teaches relationship, context, and network thinking. For OSINT, the working habits are clear. Do not just collect tools. Start from the question. Do not just stack materials. Build an evidence chain. Do not force a conclusion. State the judgment and the limits. In the next lesson, we move into 3 levels of intelligence: strategic, operational, and tactical. The same company investigation can produce very different deliverables depending on who needs the answer and what decision they need to make.